The manila envelope sat on James Harrington's doorstep like an unexploded bomb. He almost stepped on it when returning from his morning walk, the crisp autumn air still clinging to his jacket as he bent down to retrieve it. No postage, no return address. Just his name scrawled in blue ink across the front. James glanced up and down the quiet suburban street, but saw only fallen leaves dancing across empty driveways. Inside, he set his coffee mug down and carefully opened the envelope. A child's drawing slid out onto his kitchen table. Crude crayon lines formed what appeared to be two stick figures, a tall one and a small one, holding hands beside a lopsided house. The sky was a brilliant blue, the sun a perfect yellow circle with rays shooting outward. Standard childhood artwork, except for the words written at the bottom in the uneven lettering of someone just learning to write. To Dad, love, your son. James's coffee mug slipped from his fingers and shattered on the tile floor. He barely noticed the hot liquid soaking his slippers as he stared at the drawing, his hands beginning to tremble. The room seemed to tilt sideways. He didn't have a son, at least not one he knew about. James sank into a kitchen chair, the drawing clutched in his shaking hands. At 53, his life had settled into comfortable predictability. Morning walks, consulting work from home, occasional dinners with friends. After his divorce 12 years ago, he'd never remarried, never had children. Eleanor had wanted them desperately, but something in him had always hesitated, always found reasons to wait. That hesitation had ultimately cost him his marriage, and now this. He flipped the drawing over, searching for more information, but found only blank paper. The envelope revealed nothing else. James ran his fingers through his graying hair, his heart hammering against his ribs. Was this some kind of cruel joke? A case of mistaken identity? Or was there something from his past coming back to find him? A memory surfaced. Rebecca Wilson, the marketing executive he'd dated briefly after his divorce. They'd parted amicably enough when she took a job in Chicago. Had there been something she never told him? James checked the date on his phone. October 17th. If this was real, if there was actually a child, how old would he be now? 9? 10? James paced his kitchen, stepping over broken ceramic shards, the drawing still in his hand. He should throw it away. Whatever this was, mistake, prank, or something more complicated, it couldn't be good. His life was orderly now, peaceful. He'd worked hard for that peace after the turbulent end of his marriage. Yet he couldn't bring himself to drop the paper into the trash. Instead, he placed it carefully on his desk and took a photo with his phone. Then he swept up the broken mug, changed his slippers, and tried to go about his day as if nothing had happened. But everything had changed. He could feel it in the air, around him, in the sudden heaviness of each breath. The drawing seemed to watch him from across the room, those simple crayon lines rearranging his reality with each passing hour. By evening, James had convinced himself to let it go, probably neighborhood kids playing a prank. He'd check his doorbell camera footage tomorrow, but for now, he needed sleep. As he turned off the lights and headed upstairs, his phone chimed with a text message. Unknown number. Did you get his drawing? He worked really hard on it. James stood frozen at the bottom of the stairs, the blue light from his phone screen illuminating his stunned face in the darkness. 3 decades earlier, James had been a different man. Fresh out of college with an engineering degree and boundless ambition, he'd landed a job at Meridian Systems, a tech company on the rise. Those early years had been a blur of long hours, workplace competition, and the intoxicating taste of success. He'd met Eleanor at a company Christmas party. She was in marketing, brilliant and beautiful, with a laugh that could fill a room. Their courtship had been swift and passionate, a whirlwind romance that culminated in a spring wedding just 18 months after they met. James remembered standing at the altar, watching Eleanor walk down the aisle in her grandmother's restored wedding dress, thinking he'd never been happier. The first few years of marriage had been good, great even. They bought a small house in the suburbs, took weekend trips to the coast, hosted dinner parties for their growing circle of friends. Eleanor's warmth balanced James's more reserved nature, drawing him out of his shell. He'd loved that about her. But as their friends began having children, the question of starting their own family arose with increasing frequency. Eleanor was ready. James always had reasons to wait. One more promotion, a little more money saved, a slightly bigger house. The timing never seemed right. "What are you really afraid of?" Eleanor had asked one night, after another discussion that ended at an impasse. They were sitting on their back porch, summer fireflies blinking in the darkness beyond. "I'm not afraid," James had insisted, though even then he knew it wasn't entirely true. "I just want everything to be perfect before we bring a child into the world." Eleanor had looked at him with such sadness. "Nothing's ever perfect, James. That's not how life works." The memory stung now, as James stared at his phone, at the text message from the unknown sender. With trembling fingers he typed, "Who is this?" The reply came almost immediately. "Someone who thinks it's time you met your son." James sank onto the bottom stair, his mind racing. Was this possible? Had he fathered a child without knowing? The only possibility was Rebecca, but they'd been careful, hadn't they? He tried to recall their last conversation before she moved to Chicago. Had she seemed different? Had she tried to tell him something he missed? The details were foggy now, lost in the decade that had passed. Another text arrived. "His name is Ethan. He's 9 years old, and he knows about you." James's throat tightened. 9 years. The timing matched his brief relationship with Rebecca. But why now? Why like this? "I need to understand what's happening," he typed back. "Is this Rebecca?" The response took longer this time. "No. Rebecca died 6 months ago. Cancer. I'm her sister Claire. Ethan is living with me now." The world seemed to stop. Rebecca was dead. And somewhere out there was a boy, her son, possibly his son, who had lost his mother and was now reaching out to a father he'd never met. James didn't sleep that night. He sat at his kitchen table until dawn, the child's drawing before him, trying to process how his life had changed in the span of a single day. The coffee shop was busy for a Tuesday morning. James had arrived 20 minutes early, securing a corner table with a view of the door. His third cup of coffee sat untouched before him, growing cold as he checked his watch again. Claire had suggested this meeting after several days of text exchanges. James had seen photos of Ethan now, a thin boy with serious eyes and Rebecca's smile. The resemblance to James himself was subtle but undeniable, the shape of the jaw, the slight furrow between the eyebrows. DNA testing would confirm it, but in his heart, James already knew. The bell above the door jingled, and James looked up to see a woman in her early 40s entering, holding the hand of a small boy in a red jacket. Claire's eyes scanned the coffee shop until they found James. He stood awkwardly, his heart pounding so hard he was sure everyone could hear it. "Mr. Harrington?" Claire approached the table, her expression guarded. "I'm Claire Wilson." "James, please," he managed, his voice sounding strange to his own ears. Then his gaze dropped to the boy partially hidden behind Claire's leg. "And you must be Ethan." The boy looked up at him with solemn brown eyes but said nothing. James noticed he was clutching a small backpack decorated with dinosaurs. "Why don't we sit?" Claire suggested, guiding Ethan to a chair. "I ordered hot chocolate for Ethan at the counter. They'll bring it over." James nodded, lowering himself back into his seat, unsure what to do with his hands. "Thank you for meeting me." "Ethan wanted to," Claire said simply. Her resemblance to Rebecca was striking, the same heart-shaped face and direct gaze, though Claire's hair was darker, her manner more reserved. "I like your drawing," James said to Ethan, who was studying the table intently. "The one you made for me." Ethan glanced up briefly. "Mom helped me with the letters," he said, his voice so quiet James had to lean forward to hear him. "Before she got really sick." James felt a sharp pain in his chest. She did a good job teaching you. Rebecca wanted him to know about you, Claire explained, placing a protective hand on Ethan's shoulder. When she got the diagnosis and when she knew time was limited, she started telling him stories about his father. I didn't know, James said, the inadequacy of these words striking him immediately. About Ethan, about Rebecca's illness. She never told me. She was going to. Claire's voice held a hint of the anger she was clearly trying to contain for Ethan's sake. When she first found out she was pregnant, but then she saw you with someone else, just a few weeks after you'd broken up. She decided you'd moved on too quickly to have really cared about her. James tried to remember who he might have been with. There had been a few dates after Rebecca, nothing serious. Had she seen him and misunderstood? The thought that such a chance encounter had altered all their lives was staggering. A server arrived with Ethan's hot chocolate topped with whipped cream and chocolate sprinkles. The boy's face brightened slightly as he reached for it. Careful, it's hot, Claire cautioned automatically. James watched Ethan blow carefully on the steaming drink, his small face screwed up in concentration, and felt something crack open inside him, a door to a room he hadn't known existed. I have some of the same dinosaurs, James said, nodding toward Ethan's backpack. From when I was about your age. I kept them in a box in my attic. T-Rex was always my favorite. Ethan looked up, a small spark of interest in his eyes. I like velociraptors best. They hunt in packs. Smart choice, James nodded seriously. They're definitely the clever ones. Claire watched this exchange with an unreadable expression. When Ethan became absorbed in his hot chocolate again, she leaned toward James. I'm not here to demand anything from you, she said quietly. Rebecca left enough for his education. I can raise him, but he's been asking about you more since she died. I thought he deserved to know his father, if his father wanted to know him. The weight of her words, the choice she was laying before him, made James's mouth go dry. He looked at Ethan, this small person who carried his blood, who had already endured the unimaginable loss of his mother. The boy who had carefully drawn a picture of the family he wished for. I want to, James said, surprising himself with the certainty in his voice. I want to know him. I want to be part of his life, however that might work. Claire nodded, some of the tension leaving her shoulders. We'll need to take things slowly, for Ethan's sake. Of course, James agreed. Whatever is best for him. As they discussed practical next steps, another meeting that weekend, perhaps at a park where Ethan could be more comfortable, James felt a small, warm hand touch his arm. He looked down to find Ethan studying him intently. Mom said you build things that go to space, the boy said. James smiled, remembering his work on satellite components at Meridian. I used to. Now I mostly help other engineers solve problems. Ethan considered this. Could you help me build my Lego space station? I can't get the docking bay right. It was such a simple request, yet it left James speechless for a moment. I'd like that very much, he finally managed, his voice rough with emotion. As they left the coffee shop an hour later, James watched Ethan walking ahead with Claire, the boy turning once to wave goodbye. The autumn sunlight caught in his dark hair, and James felt the strange sensation of seeing his own childhood self walking away from him. He had no idea how to be a father, but for the first time in his life, he wanted to learn. The park was crowded with families enjoying the unseasonably warm October weekend. James sat on a bench near the playground, watching Ethan climb the jungle gym with focused determination. Claire sat beside him, both of them silent as they observed the boy navigating the complex structure. He's very methodical, James noted. Tests each handhold before he commits. Claire smiled slightly. Rebecca used to say he approaches everything like a tiny engineer. Guess we know where he gets that from. Their third meeting was going better than James had dared hope. The first park outing had been awkward, with Ethan shy and James unsure how to bridge the gap between them. But today, something had shifted. Ethan had greeted him with a small smile and immediately asked if James would watch him on the climbing equipment. "Has he asked about me?" James ventured. "Before Rebecca got sick, I mean." Claire sighed, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. On and off since he was about 5, Rebecca would tell him you were a scientist who worked on important projects, that you didn't know about him because you lived far away. She never spoke badly of you, if that's what you're worried about. "I wasn't there for him," James said quietly. "Or for her. I should have been." "You didn't know," Claire reminded him, though her tone suggested she hadn't entirely forgiven this fact. "And now you're here." James watched as Ethan reached the top of the structure, turning to make sure they were watching before he raised his arms in triumph. James waved back, feeling a swell of pride that caught him by surprise. "I've been thinking," he said carefully, "about what happens next. I'd like to be involved in Ethan's life in whatever way you think is appropriate. Financially, of course, but more than that." Claire studied him. "You're proposing shared custody?" "Eventually, perhaps, if Ethan is comfortable with that. For now, maybe regular visits, weekends. I could come to Chicago, or you both could visit here. I have plenty of space." Claire seemed to consider this. "Rebecca named me as his guardian in her will. Legally, I'm responsible for him." "I understand that," James said quickly. "I'm not trying to challenge that. I just want to be part of his life, to help raise him if you'll let me." "And what happens when you decide it's too much?" Claire's voice had an edge now. "When having a 9-year-old disrupts your comfortable bachelor life? Ethan's already lost one parent. I won't let him be abandoned again." The accusation stung, but James recognized the protective instinct behind it. "I can't prove my intentions except through actions," he said. "All I can tell you is that meeting Ethan has changed everything for me. I never knew what I was missing, but now that I do, I can't imagine going back to my life without him in it." From the playground, Ethan called out, "Watch this!" before sliding down a twisting slide, his face alight with the simple joy of the moment. "He has your eyes," Claire said unexpectedly. "Rebecca used to say that. She kept a photo of you, you know. Said Ethan should have it someday, to know where he came from." James felt a lump form in his throat. "I wish she'd told me." She was protecting him, and herself. Claire watched Ethan run toward another piece of equipment. She was afraid you'd reject them both. Or worse, that you'd feel obligated but resent them for changing your life. The truth of this possibility hit James hard. Would he have been ready for fatherhood then? Or would he have reacted exactly as Rebecca feared? "I've spent too much of my life playing it safe," he admitted, "waiting for perfect conditions that never come. I missed my chance with Eleanor because I was afraid. I missed knowing Ethan for 9 years. I don't want to miss any more." Claire's expression softened slightly. "Let's take it one step at a time. Ethan needs stability right now." "Of course," James agreed. "Whatever pace works for him." As if summoned by their conversation, Ethan ran over, slightly out of breath. "Can we get ice cream?" he asked, looking between them. "There's a truck over there." "Sure," Claire smiled, "if it's okay with James." Ethan turned to him expectantly, and James felt the weight of this small decision. It was just ice cream, but it was also his first opportunity to set a boundary. Or not, as something like a parent. "Sounds good to me," he said. "But maybe after lunch? We could go to that diner you mentioned." Ethan considered this compromise. "Okay, but I still get ice cream after, right?" "Right," James confirmed, surprised by how natural this negotiation felt. As they walked toward the park exit, Ethan unexpectedly slipped his small hand into James's. The simple gesture, this tiny hand trustingly placed in his, nearly undid him completely. He glanced at Claire, who gave him a small nod that somehow contained both warning and encouragement. James gently squeezed Ethan's hand, marveling at how perfectly it fit within his own. The call came on a Wednesday evening in November, as James was preparing for his weekend trip to Chicago. He'd been visiting Ethan every other weekend for the past month, staying at a hotel near Claire's house, spending Saturday and Sunday with his son. Each visit strengthened their tentative bond, with Ethan gradually opening up, sharing his interests, asking questions about James's life. When his phone rang and he saw Claire's number, James felt a spike of anxiety. She rarely called midweek. "Claire, is everything all right?" "It's Ethan," she said, her voice tight with strain. "He's in the hospital. There was an accident at school. He fell from the climbing equipment during recess. He's going to be okay, but he has a concussion and a broken arm." James's heart seemed to stop. "What hospital? I'll get on the next flight." "Northwestern Children's. James, he's been asking for you. That's why I called. He's scared and he wants his dad." His dad. The words hit James with physical force. "Tell him I'm coming. I'll be there as soon as I can." 3 hours later, James was rushing through the hospital corridors, having caught the last flight to Chicago. He found Claire in the pediatric ward, looking exhausted, a cup of untouched coffee in her hands. "How is he?" James asked, still breathless from his sprint from the taxi. "Sleeping now," Claire said, standing to lead him to Ethan's room. "The doctor says the concussion is mild. They're keeping him overnight for observation, but we should be able to take him home tomorrow." James paused at the doorway, his chest constricting at the sight of Ethan in the hospital bed, his left arm in a blue cast, a small bandage on his forehead. The boy looked impossibly small against the white sheets. "He was so brave during the setting of his arm," Claire said softly. "The nurse said she'd rarely seen a child his age stay so calm." James moved quietly to the bedside, gently touching Ethan's uninjured hand. The boy's eyelids fluttered open. "Dad?" he murmured sleepily. "You came." "Of course I came," James said, his voice thick with emotion. "How are you feeling, buddy?" "It hurts," Ethan admitted. "But the doctor said I can get everyone to sign my cast. Will you sign it first?" "It would be an honor," James said, managing a smile despite the tears threatening to spill. He'd never felt this particular combination of fear, relief, and fierce protectiveness before. Is this what being a father felt like? This terror and love so intertwined they became a single emotion? Claire handed him a marker, and James carefully wrote on the cast, "To the bravest explorer I know, love, Dad." The word felt both foreign and right as he wrote it. Ethan examined the message with drowsy satisfaction before his eyelids grew heavy again. "Will you stay?" he asked as he drifted towards sleep. "I'm not going anywhere," James promised, pulling a chair close to the bed. Claire touched his shoulder. "I'm going to get some real coffee. Do you want anything?" James shook his head, his eyes not leaving Ethan's sleeping face. When Claire returned 20 minutes later, she found James still in the same position, keeping watch. "You should get some rest," she said, handing him a coffee anyway. "There's a cot in the corner. We can take shifts." "I've been thinking," James said, accepting the cup but not drinking. "I want to move to Chicago." Claire looked startled. "What?" "Being 3 hours away by plane isn't working. Not for emergencies like this. Not for being a real part of his life." James finally turned to look at her. "I can work remotely, or find a new position here. My house in Minneapolis means nothing compared to being close to Ethan." "That's a big decision," Claire said carefully. "Are you sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything," James said, surprising himself with the certainty he felt. "When you called, when I thought he was seriously hurt and I was states away, I never want to feel that helpless again." Claire studied him for a long moment. "You really mean it, don't you? You're all in on being his father." "I am," James said simply. "If you'll let me." Claire sank into the chair opposite him, Ethan's bed between them. "Rebecca would be surprised," she said finally. "She always said you were the type who'd run from commitment." "I was," James acknowledged. For most of my life, I was exactly that person. But people can change, Claire. Sometimes they just need the right reason. They sat in silence for a while, the only sounds the steady beeping of monitors and Ethan's soft breathing. "There's a rental house on my street that's coming available next month," Claire said eventually. 3 bedrooms, fenced backyard. Ethan could walk between our houses once you're settled. James looked up, hope rising in his chest. "You'd be okay with that?" "I'm not saying it will be easy," Claire warned. "Co-parenting is complicated even when you've planned for it. We'll be figuring this out as we go." "I know," James said, "but I think we can make it work, for Ethan's sake." Claire nodded slowly. "For Ethan's sake?" As if hearing his name, Ethan stirred in his sleep, his uninjured hand reaching out instinctively. James gently took it in his own, and the boy settled again, his breathing deep and even. In that moment, watching his son sleep, James understood that his life would never be the same. And for the first time, the thought of such profound change didn't frighten him at all. The moving truck pulled away from the curb, leaving James standing on the sidewalk in front of his new home. The rental house was smaller than his place in Minneapolis, with dated kitchen cabinets and a backyard that needed work, but it was just 3 doors down from Claire's, close enough for Ethan to move freely between both homes. "Dad, come see my room!" Ethan called from the front door, his broken arm still in its cast but no longer slowing him down. In the month since the accident, he had embraced James's presence in his life with an openness that humbled his father daily. James followed him inside, where boxes labeled with Ethan's name were stacked in what would become his bedroom. They had painted it together the previous weekend, a deep blue that Ethan had chosen because it looked like the night sky. "We can put the glow-in-the-dark stars up tonight," James promised, watching Ethan inspect the freshly painted walls with satisfaction. "And my telescope by the window?" the boy asked eagerly. "Absolutely, prime viewing position." From downstairs came the sound of the front door opening. "Hello, delivery service," Claire called. They found her in the kitchen, unpacking takeout containers. "I figured neither of you would want to cook tonight," she explained, setting out plates she'd brought from her own kitchen. "Moving day requires pizza." "Best aunt ever," Ethan declared, reaching for a slice. As they ate their impromptu dinner on boxes serving as chairs and tables, James was struck by how natural this felt. This makeshift family they were creating. It wasn't conventional, but it was theirs. "Parent-teacher conferences are next Thursday," Claire mentioned, wiping pizza sauce from Ethan's chin with automatic care. "I put your name on the school forms as his father, so you should be able to attend." James nodded, grateful for this inclusion. "I'd like that. How are you doing in school these days, buddy?" Ethan shrugged. "Math is easy. Reading's okay. I don't like writing much." "He's actually doing very well," Claire added. "His teacher says he's advanced in science and mathematics." James felt a surge of pride, followed immediately by regret for all the school moments he'd missed in Ethan's earlier years. There would always be that shadow, the time lost, the milestones missed. But he was here now. That had to count for something. After dinner, as Claire helped Ethan get ready for bed in his new room, James unpacked his own boxes in the living room. Among his possessions, he found a framed photo of Eleanor, one he'd kept tucked away in his old house but had never displayed. They had been happy once. He wondered what she would think of him now, upending his life to parent a child he hadn't known existed a few months ago. "He wants you to say goodnight," Claire said, coming downstairs. She noticed the photo in his hands. "Your ex-wife?" James nodded. "Eleanor. We were married for 8 years. Ethan asked about her last week," Claire said. "Wanted to know if you had other children or a wife." "What did you tell him?" "The truth, that you were married once but didn't have other children, that you lived alone until you found out about him." Claire leaned against the doorframe. "He's going to have more questions as he gets older, about why you weren't there, about Rebecca's decisions." "I know," James sighed, I'm not sure I have good answers. None of us do, Claire said with unexpected gentleness. We all just did the best we could with what we knew at the time, even Rebecca. James set the photo down and headed upstairs to say goodnight to his son. He found Ethan already in bed, his dinosaur nightlight casting a soft glow across the room. All set for your first night in the new house? James asked, sitting on the edge of the bed. Ethan nodded, then looked serious. Dad, are you and Aunt Claire going to get married? The question caught James completely off guard. What? No, buddy. Claire is your aunt, and she's your guardian. I'm your dad. We're both here to take care of you, but we're not. It's not like that. Tommy at school has a stepmom, Ethan explained. His real mom died too, and then his dad married someone else who became his stepmom. James chose his words carefully. Every family is different, Ethan. In our family, you have me and you have Aunt Claire. We both love you very much, and we're going to work together to take care of you, but we're not going to get married. Okay. Ethan seemed to accept this. I just wondered. As James tucked him in, Ethan asked another question, his voice growing sleepy. Did you love my mom? Another question that pierced straight to James's heart. Your mom was a very special person, he said truthfully. We cared about each other very much during the time we were together. She said you were smart and kind, Ethan murmured, his eyes drifting closed. She said I got your brain and her heart. Your mom was right about a lot of things, James said softly, gently brushing Ethan's hair from his forehead. Sleep tight, buddy. Downstairs, he found Claire gathering her things to head home. Everything okay? She asked, noting his pensive expression. Ethan asked if you and I were going to get married, James said, still processing the conversation. Claire laughed, though there was a hint of awkwardness in it. Kids his age are trying to make sense of family structures. He's just figuring out how we all fit together. Right, James agreed quickly. Of course. I should get home, Claire said, moving toward the door. Call if you need anything. Otherwise, I'll see you both for breakfast tomorrow? We'll be there, James promised. After she left, he stood alone in his half-unpacked living room, surrounded by boxes containing his old life, while upstairs his son slept in a room painted the color of the night sky. Nothing about this situation was what he had planned, yet somehow it felt more right than anything had in years. James picked up the photo of Eleanor again, studying her smiling face. You were right, he said softly to the image. Nothing's ever perfect. That's not how life works. He placed the photo back in the box. Some parts of his past didn't need to come with him into this new life. Others, like the small box of dinosaur figurines he'd saved from his childhood, now sitting on Ethan's dresser, found new purpose in this unexpected future. Tomorrow, they would hang glow-in-the-dark stars on Ethan's ceiling. Tomorrow, they would continue building something new. Spring came to Chicago, melting away the harsh winter that had tested James's resolve more than once. The rental house now felt like home, with Ethan's artwork covering the refrigerator and a growing collection of shared memories filling the spaces between them. Co-parenting with Claire had found its rhythm. Ethan spent weekdays after school at James's house until Claire finished work, weekends alternating between them and holidays shared. It wasn't always smooth. There were disagreements about bedtimes, screen time, discipline, but they were learning to present a united front while respecting each other's different approaches. James had found work with a local engineering firm, taking a step back in seniority but gaining flexibility in his schedule. The trade-off seemed insignificant compared to being able to attend Ethan's science fair or coach his newly formed robotics club at school. Today was Saturday, and James was helping Ethan set up his new telescope in the backyard when his phone rang. Seeing Eleanor's name on the screen surprised him. They exchanged birthday messages and occasional updates, but rarely called. Give me a minute, buddy, he told Ethan. Keep working on the tripod legs. He stepped inside to take the call. Eleanor, Everything okay? James, her familiar voice came through, warm but hesitant. I hope I'm not interrupting anything. I'm actually in Chicago for a conference, and I wondered if you might be free for coffee tomorrow. It's been a long time. James hesitated, looking through the window at Ethan concentrating on the telescope assembly. His worlds were about to collide in a way he hadn't anticipated. I'd like that, he said finally. But I should tell you, my life is quite different now. I heard, Eleanor said. Mutual friends mentioned you'd moved to Chicago. Something about a new job? James realized she didn't know about Ethan. Of course she wouldn't. They hadn't spoken properly in months, and he'd been private about the dramatic change in his life, sharing it only with close friends. It's a bit more complicated than that, he said. Why don't we meet and I can explain in person? They arranged to meet at a cafe near her hotel the following afternoon. After hanging up, James returned to the backyard, where Ethan had successfully assembled the tripod. Who was that? The boy asked, adjusting one of the legs. An old friend, James said. Someone I was married to a long time ago, before I met your mom. Ethan looked up with interest. The lady in the picture? The one Grandma has at her house? James was startled. You've seen a picture of Eleanor? Uh-huh. Grandma has a box of Mom's stuff. There's a picture of you with a lady. Mom wrote on the back, James and his wife. James hadn't realized Rebecca had kept photos of him, much less shared them with her mother. The thought that Ethan had seen glimpses of his past life through Rebecca's eyes was unsettling. Yes, that's Eleanor, he confirmed. She's in town for work and wants to have coffee. Can I come? Ethan asked. Immediately. James hesitated. I'm not sure that's... Please? I want to meet your wife. Ex-wife, James corrected gently. And it might be complicated, buddy. Why? Ethan persisted. Doesn't she know about me? The direct question, delivered with a child's innocent curiosity, left James at a loss. No, she doesn't. We haven't talked much in recent years. So tell her, Ethan said with the simple logic of a 9-year-old. I'm good at meeting people. Aunt Claire says I'm polite. James couldn't help smiling at Ethan's pronunciation. You are very polite. Let me think about it, okay? Now let's get this telescope working before it gets dark. That evening, after Ethan had gone to bed, James called Eleanor back. Would it be all right if I brought someone with me tomorrow? He asked without preamble. Someone? Eleanor sounded surprised. Of course. A partner? My son, James said, the words still feeling new on his tongue. My 9-year-old son, Ethan. The silence on the other end stretched long enough that James wondered if they'd been disconnected. I didn't know you had a child, Eleanor finally said, her voice carefully neutral. Neither did I until last October. James took a deep breath. It's a long story, Eleanor. One I'd rather tell you in person. But Ethan asked to meet you, and I'm trying to be honest with him about my life. Another pause, then Eleanor's voice softened. Bring him. I'd like to meet him. The next day, James and Ethan arrived at the cafe 15 minutes early. Ethan was wearing his nicest jeans and a button-up shirt he usually reserved for school concerts. Remember what we talked about? James reminded him gently. Eleanor and I haven't seen each other in a long time, and this might be a little awkward for her. I know, Ethan nodded seriously. I won't talk about Mom unless she asks. James squeezed his shoulder, grateful for the boy's intuitive understanding of complex adult emotions. At 9, Ethan sometimes showed wisdom beyond his years, a trait James suspected came from having navigated his mother's illness and death with the same quiet courage. When Eleanor walked in, James felt a strange jolt of familiarity. She looked essentially the same, her blonde hair now styled in a shorter cut, a few more lines around her eyes, but still unmistakably the woman he had once planned to spend his life with. She spotted them and paused briefly before approaching their table, her eyes moving curiously between James and Ethan. Eleanor, James stood to greet her. It's good to see you. This is Ethan." "Hello, Ethan," Eleanor said, extending her hand with a warm smile. "I'm very pleased to meet you." "Hello." Ethan shook her hand solemnly. "My dad says you used to be married, before my mom." Eleanor glanced at James, a question in her eyes, before sitting down across from them. "That's right. A long time ago." As they ordered drinks, coffee for the adults, hot chocolate for Ethan, James could see Eleanor studying the boy, noting the resemblances. "Ethan is quite the astronomer," James said, trying to ease into conversation. "We just set up his new telescope yesterday." "Really?" Eleanor turned her attention to Ethan. "What do you like to look at in the sky?" "Right now I'm tracking Jupiter," Ethan said, his shyness giving way to enthusiasm. "You can see 4 of its moons with my telescope. Dad's helping me photograph them over time to see their orbits." "Dad," Eleanor repeated softly, meeting James's eyes over Ethan's head. He could read the questions there, the surprise at hearing him called by this title. As Ethan became absorbed in his hot chocolate, Eleanor leaned forward. "He seems wonderful, James." "He is," James agreed. "The best thing that's ever happened to me, even if I came to it late." "Will you tell me?" she asked simply. So James did, keeping the details appropriate for Ethan's presence, explaining about Rebecca, the drawing on his doorstep, Claire's role as guardian, and his move to Chicago. Throughout the story, Ethan occasionally added details from his perspective, his small voice matter of fact when mentioning his mother's illness and death. Eleanor listened without interruption, her expression softening as the story unfolded. When James finished, she was quiet for a moment before speaking. "Life takes unexpected turns, doesn't it?" she said finally. "I remember how afraid you were of becoming a father." "I was," James acknowledged, acutely aware of Ethan listening. "I was afraid I wouldn't be good at it, that I would somehow fail. I was wrong to let that fear make decisions for me." "And now?" Eleanor asked. "Now I'm still afraid sometimes," James admitted. "But I've learned that's part of being a parent. The fear doesn't matter as much as showing up anyway." Eleanor smiled, a genuine smile that reached her eyes. "Parenthood suits you, James. I never would have predicted it. But seeing you with Ethan, you've changed." "For the better, I hope," James said. "Definitely for the better," she confirmed. As they prepared to leave, Eleanor knelt to Ethan's level. "It was wonderful to meet you, Ethan. You know, your dad and I wanted children when we were married, but the timing never seemed right. I'm glad he found his way to being a father, even if it wasn't with me." Ethan considered this. "Do you have kids now?" "I do," Eleanor said, surprising James. "A daughter, Lily. She's 7. "You never mentioned," James began. "We haven't really talked in years, have we?" Eleanor said without reproach. "I married again 6 years ago. David is a pediatrician. We live in Boston." "I'm happy for you," James said, and meant it. Outside the cafe, as they said their goodbyes, Eleanor hugged James briefly. "Thank you for introducing me to your son," she whispered. "It healed something I didn't know was still broken." As James watched her walk away, Ethan slipped his hand into his father's. "I like her," he declared. "She's nice." "Yes, she is," James agreed. "Are you sad you didn't have kids with her?" Ethan asked as they walked toward their car. James looked down at his son, this miraculous person who had entered his life through such an unlikely series of events. "No," he said truthfully, "because then I wouldn't have you." Ethan seemed satisfied with this answer. As they drove home, James found himself thinking about the strange paths life took, how doors closed and opened, how fear could limit horizons while courage expanded them. He had once thought his life was defined by what he had achieved professionally, by the careful control he maintained over his circumstances. Now he understood that life was defined by connections, messy, complicated, beautiful connections to other human beings. To this child beside him, humming tunelessly as he looked out the window at the passing city, James had never felt less in control of his life, and he had never been happier. The courtroom was quieter than James had expected, the proceedings more straightforward. After 18 months of co-parenting with Claire, they had jointly decided to formalize James's role in Ethan's life. Today, the judge would approve James's petition for legal paternity and establish a permanent shared custody arrangement. Ethan sat between them in the front row, swinging his legs nervously, dressed in his best clothes. At 11, he was growing rapidly, his face losing some of its childish roundness, his interests evolving from dinosaurs to computer programming and astronomical photography. "All rise," the clerk announced as the judge entered. The legal process itself took less than 30 minutes. The judge reviewed their paperwork, asked a few questions about their living arrangements and Ethan's schooling, and then addressed Ethan directly. "Young man, do you understand what's happening here today?" Ethan nodded, then remembered to speak aloud. "Yes, Your Honor. My dad is becoming my legal dad, not just my real dad." The judge smiled. "That's right. And you're comfortable with this arrangement? Living part-time with your father and part-time with your aunt?" "It's been working good so far," Ethan said seriously. "They live really close to each other, so it's not like I have to go far. And they talk about stuff, so the rules are mostly the same at both houses." "I'm glad to hear that," the judge said, looking pleased. "It sounds like you have two adults who care very much about your well-being." When the judge signed the final order and handed copies to both James and Claire, a weight James hadn't realized he was carrying lifted from his shoulders. The law now recognized what his heart had known from the moment he saw that crayon drawing. Ethan was his son, in every way that mattered. Outside the courthouse, Claire suggested they celebrate with lunch at Ethan's favorite restaurant. As they walked toward her car, Ethan between them, James felt a surge of gratitude toward this woman who had made space for him in Ethan's life when she could have shut him out. "Thank you," he said quietly to Claire while Ethan ran ahead to the car. "For today, for everything." Claire smiled, the guarded expression she'd worn when they first met long gone. "We make a good team, don't we? Not what any of us planned, but it works." "It works," James agreed. At the restaurant, as Ethan demolished a burger and excitedly discussed his upcoming science project, James's phone buzzed with a text message from Eleanor. "Thinking of you today. Hope everything went smoothly with the court proceedings. Lily sends her love to Ethan." The two families had stayed in touch, with occasional visits when Eleanor brought Lily to Chicago to see her grandparents. The children had developed an unlikely friendship, connected by the strange circumstances of their parents' histories. "Can we have ice cream after this?" Ethan asked, interrupting James's thoughts. "I don't see why not," Claire answered before James could. "It's not every day your dad becomes your dad officially," Ethan grinned. "That sounds weird when you say it like that." "Life is weird sometimes," Claire said, ruffling his hair affectionately. "But weird can be wonderful." Later that evening, after Claire had gone home and Ethan was getting ready for bed, James found him sitting on the floor of his bedroom, looking through a photo album Rebecca had made during the early years of his life. "Looking for something specific?" James asked, sitting beside him. "Just thinking about Mom," Ethan said. "Do you think she'd be okay with today? With you being my legal dad now?" James chose his words carefully. "I think your mom wanted what was best for you. She kept photos and stories about me so you would know where you came from. When she knew she was very sick, she made sure you had a drawing to send me, to open that door. I believe she would be happy knowing you have people who love you and are committed to taking care of you." Ethan nodded, tracing a photo of Rebecca holding him as a toddler. "I remember when she told me about you. It was after she got sick, when we knew she wasn't getting better. She said everyone deserves to know where they come from, and that you were a good person who just didn't know about me." James felt his throat tighten. Your mom was very wise. Yeah, Ethan agreed. She also said sometimes life gives you second chances when you least expect them. He looked up at James. I think you were her second chance. For me, I mean. The simple profundity of this observation, this child's understanding of his mother's final gift, left James momentarily speechless. He pulled Ethan into a hug, holding him close. And you were mine, he said finally. My second chance at the most important thing in life. As he tucked Ethan into bed that night, James noticed the original crayon drawing framed on the wall, the two stick figures holding hands beside a house. He'd had it professionally framed for Ethan's last birthday, a reminder of where their journey together had begun. Dad, Ethan said sleepily, as James turned to leave. I'm glad you found my drawing. Me too, buddy, James said softly. More than you'll ever know. 5 years later, James stood in the driveway, watching Ethan load the last of his belongings into the car. At 16, his son now stood eye to eye with him, his features a striking blend of Rebecca's warmth and James's intensity. I think that's everything, Ethan said, closing the trunk. Unless you want to check my room again? I trust you, James said, though a part of him wanted to delay this moment, to find some excuse to keep Ethan home a little longer. The summer astronomy program at the university was an incredible opportunity, one Ethan had earned through his exceptional talent and dedication. But 6 weeks seemed an eternity to be apart. Claire pulled into the driveway, getting out of her car with a box in her hands. Almost ready? The traffic heading downtown will be terrible if we wait much longer. Just saying goodbye to Dad, Ethan said, turning back to James with a mixture of excitement and apprehension on his face. Claire discreetly busied herself arranging something in the car, giving them a moment of privacy. You've got everything? James asked, knowing he was stalling. Your medication for the pollen allergies? Enough socks? Dad? Ethan rolled his eyes, but his smile was affectionate. I'll be fine. It's a university campus, not the wilderness. They have stores if I need anything. I know, James conceded. It's just, this is the longest we'll have been apart since you found me, Ethan finished for him. It was how they sometimes referred to that day when the drawing appeared on James's doorstep, the day they found each other. Call me if you need anything, James said. Anything at all, and we'll video chat on Sundays, like we planned. I will, Ethan promised. Then, with the directness that still sometimes caught James by surprise, are you going to be okay? You and Aunt Claire both living in empty houses? James smiled at his son's concern. We'll manage. Claire's sister is visiting next week with her kids, and I've got that engineering conference in Denver. The time will pass quickly. Ethan nodded, then suddenly stepped forward and hugged James tightly. Thanks for letting me go, he said quietly. I know it wasn't an easy decision. James returned the embrace, reminded again of how perceptive his son had become. The astronomy program had been a point of contention initially, not because James didn't support Ethan's ambitions, but because the protective part of him had balked at sending his 16-year-old to live independently, even in a supervised university setting. It had been Claire who'd convinced him that Ethan was ready, that holding him back would do more harm than good. You earned this opportunity, James said, releasing him. I'm incredibly proud of you. Your mom would be too. Ethan smiled at the mention of Rebecca, no longer a painful subject, but a shared connection they both treasured. I'm taking her star chart book with me, he said, the one she used when she was in college. She'd like that, James nodded. Claire approached them, checking her watch. We really should get going if you want to get settled before orientation this evening. The final goodbyes were quick. A last hug, promises to call, reminders about safety. Then James stood in the driveway, watching the car disappear around the corner, carrying his son toward his future. The house felt impossibly quiet when he went back inside. Over the years, it had transformed from a temporary rental to a permanent home, filled with evidence of their shared life. Ethan's academic awards on the walls, photographs of camping trips and science fairs, the sophisticated telescope that had replaced the beginner model long ago. James wandered into Ethan's room, now strangely neat without the usual clutter of teenage life. On the desk sat a small wrapped package with a note. "For Dad. Open when you start missing me too much." Smiling at his son's thoughtfulness, James carefully unwrapped the package. Inside was a framed photograph he'd never seen before. Rebecca holding newborn Ethan in the hospital, her face radiant despite her obvious exhaustion. On the back, in Ethan's handwriting, "Mom would want you to have this. She saved it for you." James sank onto the edge of the bed, studying the photograph with blurred vision. Rebecca looked so young, so full of life as she gazed at their son. Had she somehow known, even then, that one day James would be part of Ethan's life? Had she preserved this moment believing it might eventually be shared? The sound of the doorbell startled him from his thoughts. Wiping his eyes, James went downstairs to find Claire on his doorstep, holding a bottle of wine and 2 glasses. "I thought you might want company," she said simply. James stepped aside to let her in, grateful for her understanding. Their relationship had evolved over the years from wary co-parents to genuine friends, bound by their shared love for Ethan and the unconventional family they had created together. "He left me a gift," James said, showing her the photograph as they settled in the living room. Claire studied it with a soft smile. "Rebecca took that the day after he was born. I was there." She looked up at James. "She would be happy with how things turned out, you know. She never wanted Ethan to grow up without a father. She just didn't know how to bridge that gap while she was alive. So she found a way to do it after she was gone," James said quietly, "through a crayon drawing and a brave little boy." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, sipping wine, sharing memories of Ethan's childhood and speculating about his future. The ache of his absence remained, but James found it tempered by pride in the young man his son was becoming and gratitude for the journey that had brought them together. Later, after Claire had gone home, James placed the new photograph beside his bed, next to the one of Ethan on his first day of middle school. The contrast between the newborn in Rebecca's arms and the confident teenager who had driven away that morning was striking, a visual reminder of all the years James had missed and all the precious time they had shared since. His phone chimed with a text message from Ethan. "Made it to campus. Room is small but has great view of Observatory Dome. Miss you already, but this place is amazing. Love you, Dad." James typed back, "Miss you too. Opened your gift. Thank you. It means more than I can say. Love you, son." He set the phone down and looked again at the photograph of Rebecca and newborn Ethan. "Thank you," he whispered to her image, "for the second chance, for trusting me with him, even after everything." Outside his window, the first stars of evening were appearing in the darkening sky. James thought of Ethan, perhaps looking at those same stars from his new temporary home, beginning the next chapter of his journey. Their connection remained, unbreakable now, spanning time and distance, and even loss. It had begun with a simple crayon drawing left on a doorstep, 2 stick figures holding hands, signed, "Your son." It had grown into something neither of them could have imagined that day, a family forged not from obligation or expectation, but from choice, from love, from the courage to embrace an unexpected gift when life presented it. James hadn't been ready to be a father when Eleanor had wanted children. He hadn't known about Ethan during Rebecca's lifetime, but when that drawing appeared on his doorstep, when the universe offered him one more chance to get it right, he had finally been brave enough to say yes, and that had made all the difference.